The interview, Bret Baier and Kamala Harris. It was, if it was attempting to move the needle, I don't think it necessarily did that. I don't think it went as awful for Kamala Harris as many people think because the bar was so outrageously low. I think it went far better for Bret Baier than Bret Baier even knows right now because of the people on the political left who are desperate to attack him and question his credibility because of questions and reminders like this.
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency.
My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency, but in two different interviews, she never even cleaned up the idea. She made the same statement. Nothing comes to mind. No real differences. Tony Katz today. Great to be with you. Ed Morrissey joins us right now of hotair.com, where he is the capo de tutti capo, having his own thoughts on this debate. All right, debate interview that took place with Bret Baier, including getting some flack from Joe Scarborough over at MSNBC. Let's start with the basics. I argue nothing really changed here. It did not move the needle. It could have been far worse for Kamala Harris, and it wasn't. It could have been far worse for Bret Baier, and it wasn't. Your take on this interview?
Well, I think it went terrible for Kamala Harris. And I don't know that it could have gone much worse for Kamala Harris than it actually did. She came across as completely unprepared to discuss anything about her own record, and she's still pursuing this very strange failing strategy of simply running as a default choice while trying to disqualify Trump. And I actually just got the transcript a few minutes ago from Fox News, and I'm in the middle of doing sort of an analysis of Bret Baier's performance, right? Because there's a lot of he's a hack. He's taking questions from the Trump campaign website and that sort of thing. And I think that what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut and paste every single question that Bret Baier asked, and then say, okay, which one of these is an unfair question for a presidential candidate 3 weeks before an election? Because none of them are. They're all on substance. They're all on Harris's positions. But Kamala Harris did every single time tried to basically talk about nothing but Donald Trump.
Correct.
Now, I get that as a candidate, you're going to try to do that. But when you mention your opponent's name 35 times in roughly 26 minutes, which is what is going on here, at least there was 35 mentions of Trump in this transcript, and I would say 90 to 95% of those were from her. A couple of them were from Bret Baier. And you're not saying anything about your own positions 3 weeks out from an election. The whole idea of going on Fox News was to paint herself as an alternative to the for the Fox News audience to Donald Trump. And to do that, you have to tell something about your own positions, talk about your own performance, put it in the proper context. And she didn't do any of that. It was completely wasted. The whole thing was a waste of time. She should never have done it in the first place.
Now, that's an argument, right? She never should have done it the first time. But I guess my argument of it didn't go as bad for her as it could have is predicated on the idea of what else could you have possibly expected? When I talk about that, the appearance on The View, that's what people talk about. When she was asked by Sunny Hostin what would be different, Sunny Hostin, and she says, nothing really comes to mind. That was awful. All the work that her team has been doing to try and separate her from Joe Biden failed in an instant. What people don't talk about is the fact that hours later she went on with Colbert, seemingly the same day, and Same answer. They hadn't thought of the answer yet. So I wasn't expecting grandiose policy conversations. Maybe your argument is right that could have at least been intriguing to people, but this was the only thing to expect. And in a world of expecting this, she sat there, she pushed back, if you will, and that to the left is, well, look how tough she is. Trump would never do this, and that to them is the victory.
No, but then you can do that without going on Fox News. And that's the thing. The whole idea behind going on Fox News, she's not there because she has this deep and abiding sense that she should be fair. She's there because she's desperate to reverse a very bad trend that they're seeing in polling. Certainly they're seeing it internally. Now we're starting to see it in external polls. Her position is eroding. And going on Fox News was her opportunity to reverse that by making a pitch about how she isn't Joe Biden. You're not going to show up on Fox News and say, I'm not going to do anything, or at least you shouldn't say, I'm not going to do anything different than Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the most unpopular incumbent president in modern American history in this stage of his presidency. So the whole thing should have been, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to turn the page, if you will, not just on Donald Trump, but also on Joe Biden. And I'm going to move back to the center. You guys can trust me on this. Here's what I plan to do in order to get your trust. Because unless you're going to do that, there is no reason whatsoever to go on that particular show. None. There's no reason to do it. And it's as if these guys are learning strategy from Joe Biden, because these guys are checkers players in a world of three-dimensional chess, and they have been that way for 4 years.
But why shouldn't
Biden
they be?
And Harris.
Hold on. Whoa. Talking to Ed Morrissey of hotair.com, who I love and adore. Why shouldn't they be? It works. If I take a look right now at the Cook Political Report, right? And I like what Amy Walter does here. Harris is back up by 2 points. She was trending down, is now at 49.3. Trump is at his highest, by the way, in months at 47.3. She's still within points. She's still leading in the national polling, although not the battlegrounds. And yes, I'm fully aware that the Fox News poll, which was +2 for Harris a month ago, is now +2 for Trump. But the strategy of not saying much, screaming Trump fascist, and hiding from the media, it's not like it's hurting them.
Well, I disagree with that. I think it is hurting them. I think that had an expiration date, and that expiration date was somewhere around the 60 Minutes interview. It didn't work. It's not working.
Because they came out of the basement. So they came out of the basement and they blew up the strategy.
Well, I think that the basement strategy only works during the pandemic anyway, and I think they figured that out.
Maybe
they came out of the debate on ABC News with a little bit of momentum. I mean, you take a look at the betting market trend lines. You take a look a little bit at the polling trend lines, and they came out of that with a little bit of momentum. But even before they went on Fox News, Nate Silver was talking about this 2 days ago, that the trend lines had actually crossed over, and it was back to 50-50 or worse for Harris. And if you look at the betting markets, and I haven't seen them this morning, but yesterday there was a 17-point gap. This is the biggest trend line for Trump in the betting markets, which I think have been pretty predictive of where polling is going to go in this cycle, and was actually in the last cycle too. That's what they're up against. That's what they were trying to correct by going on Fox News and talking about going on Joe Rogan. It was a disaster. They weren't prepared for it at all. And Kamala Harris, the best I guess you can say is that she fights, but telling people that Brett Baer's a sexist because he was trying to press her for actual answers to the questions he asked rather than her litany of cliches is not going to sell, especially not with the voters that they were trying to convince yesterday.
And that's really where it didn't work for her in the eyes of the political left. Talking to Ed Morrissey of hotair.com. You mentioned, by the way, the betting markets. Very often the site that's utilized on this is called Polymarket, Poly, Polymarket. Full disclosure, I have no financial relationship with them whatsoever. They see the chances of Trump winning at 61.9, Kamala Harris 38. And that gap has really gotten intense, and it crossed, I believe, on October 2nd. From October 2nd to October 3rd, it crossed lost and has been Trump on a line nearly straight up and Kamala Harris on a line nearly straight down. I stick to my points that this could have been worse for Kamala Harris, but it could have been better if her media allies and acolytes knew how to be professionals and knew how to engage in focus, which is stunning. They're so good at moving narrative because they've got all of the voice, but they have no idea how to think on their feet. You tweet out, put out there on X. You can follow Ed at Ed Morrissey on the Twitter X. Wow, wow, wow. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. To which Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, who would do well to put you on his show, Ed, he writes back to you, yup, he was shockingly rude, meaning Bret Baier. And then you had people referring to Bret Baier as sexist, Bret Baier as an interrupter. You had someone on MSNBC saying that the reason Bret Baier was interrupting it's because he doesn't want to hear, those people don't want to hear from a woman of color. They don't want to know that they even make sound. He invited her on. If Fox News said, hey, Kamala Harris, you could be on every show all day, or Kamala Harris asked for that, Fox would say, yes, it's undoubtedly true. But it is the going after Bret Baier that is proof that they don't think it went well, never mind what I think, and therefore they're trying to change the subject in its totality. To Joe Scarborough, what do you say when he says that Bret Baier, the interviewer, was shockingly rude?
I would say that first off, Joe's a friend. I've actually been on his show before a few times. He was very kind to bring me on when I was doing my book tour twice, actually. And so I have no ill will, and I didn't really take offense to his tweet reply to me. But I would say that this is what journalism actually looks like. And he should know better than that, because Bret Baier has done the same thing to Donald Trump. Donald Trump walked away from the Bret Baier interview.
People forget about that one.
Himself too. Yeah. I mean, he did the same thing to Donald Trump. I think it was last year or earlier this year. So the idea that trying to hold a sitting office holder and a candidate for president accountable for their record and not allowing them to filibuster and answer with non sequiturs as an avoidance mechanism, calling that rude is nonsense. This isn't a polite afternoon tea. This is trying to hold politicians accountable for their positions and for their policy outcomes. And that doesn't have to be Marquess de Queensbury. It does have to be fair. And that's the reason why I'm writing this post. It'll go up a little bit later today, to just have everybody read the questions he asked. And then I'm going to say, now point to the one that's unfair. Point to the one that is some sort of a campaign ad
or an ambush
for the other side,
which was the allegation from the David Plouffes of the world, former Obama advisors, that it was an ambush interview, Ed.
Yeah, absurd. I mean, I've just finished going through this question set. There isn't one in there that isn't about substance, that isn't about her own positions, and about the policies of the administration that she worked in for the last 3.5 years.
Before I let you go, this idea that it hurt her, this interview hurt her because there was an opportunity maybe to grab people on the fence, and she didn't take it by giving answers of substance or engaging policy differential. That is to believe that at this stage of the game, with a little less than 3 weeks to go, that there is anybody on the fence. Do you believe there are still people who can be convinced to go another direction?
You know, I saw a poll, and I forget which one it was. It showed like 14% undecided. And I can kind of see that. Because
I can show you a poll that says 14% still think Elvis is alive, hanging out with Tupac, dining on chupacabra. I don't...
Hey, look, I'm just saying that there are people that just don't like either one of these candidates.
True.
And so, yeah, I can kind of see where there's still maybe some people on the fence. And this, I think, blew that up, at least for the people who might be otherwise right-leaning. There's no way that this performance convinced them that she's actually presidential material. And that was the reason for going on Fox. That was the whole reason for going on Fox.
Yeah, I think you're making a rather compelling argument, even if you think it like I do. Your argument is pretty solid. Ed Morrissey is his name. Hotair.com is where you find him. Follow him on the Twitter X at Ed Morrissey. Morrissey. That's what you do with the 2 R's and the 2 S's right there. You follow Ed Morrissey. Ed, a pleasure. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today.